Welcome back. There's now a pilot study work plan to determine the best way to dispose of thousands of tons of hazardous corn waste from the former AltEn ethanol plant in Mead. Contractors started cleaning up solids just yesterday.
But as 6 News' Johan Marin found out, despite progress being made, a state lawmaker he spoke with isn't satisfied with the plan.
About 8,000 tons of trash, unused materials, and piles of soil are moving from the former ethanol plant south of Mead to the Pheasant Point landfill near Bennington. It's a process the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy expects to take 4 to 6 weeks.
So it's very concerning that it's already going on to at least one landfill.
But AltEn's facility response group, AFRG, still has yet to figure out a place to dispose of pesticide-contaminated waste known as wet cake. They expect to solidify and haul it by the end of the year.
People may not be aware that the wet cake was poisonous because of coated seed corn, which was neonicotinoid coated seed corn that's been banned in many countries.
Senator Carol Blood believes the plan is detrimental to the environment. Along with the wastewater that leaked from the facility and contaminated the town's waters, this wet cake remains piled outside the facility and exposed to the atmosphere.
And so what we're doing is we're moving the problem from one community to another community, and it doesn't seem that the guardrails are in place to protect whomever lives by those landfills.
However, AFRG promises it will safely transport the waste. Blood is happy to see the progress, but remains skeptical.
I'm going to continue to say that I think much of this is too little, too late, and the long-term consequences have yet to be revealed.
Apart from disposing the waste, AFRG will continue to monitor the odor from the toxic byproducts, but they're doing their best to remedy the situation. On your side, Johan Marin, 6 News.
We're told AltEn also received a wastewater works construction permit to allow contractors to treat existing wastewater stored in lagoons at its site.
Well, the holiday